The aspiring artist. The humble beginnings. Jamal Carter was born and raised in the heart of Atlanta, Georgia, where creativity thrived amidst struggle. His mother worked double shifts as a nurse, and his father, a jazz musician, had instilled in him a love for the arts. As a child, Jamal would sketch for hours, losing himself in lines and colors, inspired by the vibrant murals in his neighborhood. By the time he was a teenager, his art captured the raw emotion and energy of the streets, reflecting stories of joy, pain, resilience, and unity. Despite his talent, Jamal often felt the weight of his environment. Teachers praised his skills but warned him that art was an unreliable career path. "Be realistic," they would say. Still, Jamal's determination was unwavering. He believed that his work could tell stories that words couldn't and dreamed of seeing his art hanging in galleries alongside the greats. The struggles of recognition. After graduating from a local art program, Jamal threw himself into his craft. He spent countless nights painting, his small apartment doubling as a studio. Yet, breaking into the art world was a challenge. Gallery owners and critics, predominantly white and affluent, often dismissed him without a second glance. His vibrant, urban-inspired pieces were deemed too niche or not marketable. Jamal submitted his portfolio to over a dozen galleries, only to receive cold rejection emails, or no response at all. The few times he managed to secure meetings, the gallery owners barely hid their disdain, their subtle sneers a stark reminder of the barriers he faced. But Jamal refused to give up. He believed in his work, even if no one else did. The encounter with Martin Gray. One fateful morning, Jamal learned about an open call opportunity at Gray Fine Arts, one of the most prestigious galleries in the city. Owned by Martin Gray, the gallery was renowned for its exclusivity and elite clientele. Martin was a tall, silver-haired man with a sharp suit and sharper tongue, notorious for his condescending attitude toward anyone he deemed unworthy. Jamal spent days perfecting his presentation, carefully selecting pieces that showcased his range and depth. Armed with his portfolio and a hopeful heart, he walked into the gallery, the smell of polished wood and expensive perfume filling the air. Martin Gray greeted him with a practiced smile that faded the moment he saw Jamal. His eyes lingered on Jamal's worn sneakers and thrift store blazer, betraying his judgment before he even spoke. "What can I do for you?" Martin asked, his tone dripping with feigned politeness. "I'm an artist," Jamal began, his voice steady, despite the knot in his stomach. "I was hoping to show you some of my work." Martin glanced at the portfolio Jamal held out, but made no move to take it. "I see," he said, his smile tight. "Unfortunately, we're very selective about the artists we represent." "I understand," Jamal said quickly. "But if you could just take a look." Martin cut him off with a raised hand. "I appreciate your enthusiasm, but this gallery caters to a specific clientele. We focus on established artists whose work aligns with our brand." "But how do you become established if no one gives you a chance?" Jamal pressed, his frustration bubbling to the surface. Martin sighed, as if Jamal's persistence was an inconvenience. "Look," he said, his voice dropping to a condescending whisper. "Your kind of art might do well at local fairs or street markets. But this," he gestured around the gallery, his tone implying Jamal didn't belong, "this is a different world." The humiliation. Jamal stood frozen, the weight of Martin's words sinking in. He felt the stares of other patrons and staff, their curiosity tinged with pity or disdain. Swallowing his pride, Jamal nodded and turned to leave. As he stepped out into the brisk air, tears pricked his eyes. The rejection stung, but it was Martin's tone, the implication that his art, and by extension, his identity, didn't belong, that cut the deepest. Yet, amidst the pain, a fire ignited within him. If the art world wanted to shut him out, he would find a way to break in. "I'll show them," Jamal muttered to himself, gripping his portfolio tighter. "I'll show them all." The spark of determination grew into a blaze as he walked away from the gallery, ready to carve his own path to greatness. The rising star. Turning pain into purpose. After his humiliating encounter at Gray Fine Arts, Jamal Carter returned to his tiny apartment-turned-studio with a heavy heart but an unbreakable resolve. He spent days analyzing his work, questioning if he needed to change his style to fit the mold of acceptable art. But every time he considered altering his vision, he was reminded of why he started, to tell the raw, unfiltered stories of his community and himself. Jamal decided to double down on his authenticity. He painted with even more fervor, pouring his emotions onto the canvas. His work became bolder, more daring, with vibrant colors and powerful imagery that captured the resilience, struggles, and triumphs of life in his neighborhood. Each piece told a story, unapologetically steeped in culture, history, and emotion. Building an online presence. With galleries refusing to give him a platform, Jamal turned to social media. Encouraged by his childhood friend Aisha, a tech-savvy entrepreneur, he started an Instagram account to showcase his work. At first, his posts garnered little attention, just a handful of likes and comments from friends and family. But Jamal remained consistent, sharing not just his art but the stories behind each piece. One day, Jamal posted a painting titled "Resilience Rising," a powerful piece depicting a young black girl standing defiantly against a backdrop of chaos, her shadow forming the shape of a phoenix. The post unexpectedly went viral. Thousands of people shared it, praising its raw emotion and beauty. Comments poured in from around the world, with people expressing how deeply the piece resonated with them. Overnight, Jamal's follower count skyrocketed. His inbox was flooded with messages, not only from admirers but also from small art blogs and collectors curious about his work. For the first time, Jamal felt seen. The breakthrough. A month after his viral success, Jamal received an unexpected message from Eleanor Hayes, a renowned art collector and philanthropist known for her impeccable taste and influence in the art world. Eleanor, who had discovered his work through Instagram, was captivated by the authenticity and depth of his paintings. "Your work is extraordinary," she wrote. "It tells stories that need to be heard. I'd like to meet you and discuss how I can support your career." Jamal couldn't believe it. He immediately agreed, meeting Eleanor at her luxurious home, which doubled as a private gallery. She purchased 3 of his paintings on the spot for a total of $150,000, a life-changing amount for Jamal. More importantly, Eleanor used her connections to introduce Jamal to prominent art curators, collectors, and critics. A meteoric rise. With Eleanor's support, Jamal's career took off. His first major exhibition, titled Voices of the Unheard, debuted at a prominent New York gallery. The show was an overwhelming success, with every piece selling out within hours. Critics hailed Jamal as a revolutionary voice in contemporary art, praising his ability to blend raw emotion with masterful technique. The success snowballed. Jamal began receiving commissions from high-profile clients, including celebrities and institutions. His social media following grew into the millions, with fans eagerly awaiting each new piece. His paintings, which once struggled to find a home, now sold for prices ranging from $200,000 to over $1 million. A unique voice in the art world. Jamal's art resonated because it was unapologetically real. While many artists focused on abstract concepts or sanitized themes, Jamal's work captured the complexity of human experiences: joy, pain, love, injustice, and hope. His pieces became symbols of empowerment for underrepresented communities, sparking conversations about race, identity, and resilience. Despite his growing fame, Jamal remained grounded. He continued to work from his modest studio, refusing to let success dilute his vision. His mother often reminded him, "Stay true to your roots, and your roots will keep you strong." A household name. Within a few years, Jamal Carter became a household name in the art world. His paintings were featured in major museums and private collections across the globe. Critics compared him to the greats, but Jamal always insisted he was simply telling stories that mattered to him. The same galleries that once rejected him now clamored to represent him. Offers flooded in, but Jamal was selective, choosing partnerships that aligned with his values. He also launched initiatives to support emerging artists from marginalized communities, ensuring others didn't have to face the same struggles he endured. Reflection. One evening, as Jamal stood in his studio, he gazed at one of his earliest paintings, a piece he had created as a teenager, dreaming of a future where his art would make a difference. The journey had been long and grueling, but he had arrived. Yet, he knew this was only the beginning. With a smile, he picked up his brush and started on a new canvas. His story wasn't just about personal success, it was about paving the way for others to rise, just as he had. It was one of his own early works, painted during his struggling years. Jamal recognized it immediately. It was a raw, emotionally charged piece that Martin had dismissed as unrefined when Jamal had shown it to him years ago. Now, the same painting hung in Martin's gallery with an eye-watering price tag of $2.5 million. "Ah, this one," Martin said, his tone reverent. "A rare find. The artist is a sensation now, Jamal Carter. His work has skyrocketed in value over the past few years." Jamal raised an eyebrow, feigning curiosity. "Jamal Carter, you say? What's his story?" Martin straightened, clearly eager to demonstrate his knowledge. "A fascinating one, really. He started as an unknown, struggling to break into the art world. But his work resonated with the right people, and now he's a household name. This piece here is one of his earlier works. Primitive compared to his current masterpieces, of course, but still significant. A true investment." Jamal suppressed a laugh. The irony was almost too much. The reveal. Jamal turned to face Martin, his expression unreadable. "You know," he began, his voice calm, "I showed this painting to a gallery owner once. He told me it was unrefined. Suggested I sell my work at street fairs." Martin froze, the practiced smile faltering. "Is that so?" he said, his tone wary. Jamal held his gaze, letting the silence stretch. Then, with a small smile, he extended his hand. "Jamal Carter. Nice to see you again, Mr. Gray." The color drained from Martin's face as realization dawned. He stumbled over his words, trying to recover. "Mr. Carter. I didn't recognize you. What an honor to have you here." Jamal tilted his head, his smile widening. "I'm sure it is." Martin scrambled to apologize, his polished demeanor unraveling. "About our last meeting, I hope you understand, it was nothing personal. It's just that, at the time, I couldn't see." "Save it," Jamal interrupted, his tone sharp but controlled. "You couldn't see my worth. I get it. But now, my work hangs in your gallery, and you're profiting from it." Martin's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. For once, he had no clever retort. "Closure." Jamal took a step closer, lowering his voice. "You know, I came here for closure, not revenge. The way you treated me pushed me to work harder, so in a way, I should thank you. But let me give you a piece of advice: respect the artists. Every masterpiece you sell starts with someone who dared to believe in their vision, even when people like you dismissed them." With that, Jamal turned and walked away, leaving Martin standing there, stunned and speechless. Outside the gallery, Jamal took a deep breath, the weight of the past finally lifting from his shoulders. He wasn't the same young artist who had walked into that gallery years ago, seeking validation. He had carved his own path, and his success spoke for itself. The takeover. The offer they can't refuse. 2 weeks after Jamal's revealing encounter at Gray Fine Arts Gallery, he sat at the head of a sleek conference table in a private office space. His legal and financial advisors surrounded him, reviewing the final details of a surprising proposition. Jamal Carter, now a multi-millionaire and internationally recognized artist, was preparing to buy the very gallery that had once dismissed him. Martin Gray had no idea what was coming when he received the formal offer. Sitting in his office, sipping his daily espresso, Martin skimmed the email and nearly dropped his cup. The offer was staggering, an amount well above the gallery's market value, paired with an agreement that Martin would step down from his role as owner but could retain a modest advisory position for a transitional period. Jamal's name in the email signature made Martin's palms sweat. He knew he was in no position to negotiate. The gallery had been losing its luster in recent years, overshadowed by newer, more inclusive spaces. Financial strains had forced him to rely heavily on commissions from high-value artists like Jamal, a fact Jamal's team had cleverly factored into their offer. The deal was, as Jamal's lawyer described it, too good for him to refuse. The transition. Weeks later, the transition of ownership began. Jamal arrived at the gallery for a formal signing ceremony, wearing a crisp navy suit that reflected his newfound power. Martin, now visibly humbled, was polite and subdued. Cameras flashed as Jamal and Martin shook hands for the press, though the strained smile on Martin's face spoke volumes. "You've built something remarkable here," Jamal said during the ceremony, his voice measured and confident. "But it's time for this gallery to evolve, to become a space that represents all voices, not just a select few." Martin nodded stiffly, his discomfort evident. While the words stung, he couldn't deny the truth in them. As the new owner, Jamal wasted no time implementing changes. He rebranded the gallery, renaming it Carter's Collective, a nod to his vision of creating a space that celebrated diversity and inclusivity. The once exclusive atmosphere of gray fine arts was replaced with a welcoming, vibrant energy. Plush chairs and glass cases gave way to community-inspired installations, interactive exhibits, and rotating showcases of underrepresented artists. Championing underrepresented artists. Jamal's first move was to curate an opening exhibition featuring artists from marginalized communities, many of whom had never had their work displayed in such a prestigious space. The exhibit, titled Unveiled Voices, drew massive crowds and rave reviews. Pieces ranged from large-scale murals to delicate sculptures, all celebrating stories that had long been ignored by the mainstream art world. Jamal also introduced mentorship programs, offering young artists resources, guidance, and opportunities to develop their craft. He partnered with nonprofits and educational institutions, turning the gallery into a hub for artistic growth and social impact. But transforming the gallery wasn't just about logistics, it was deeply personal. Every decision Jamal made reflected his commitment to breaking down barriers for those who came after him. The walls that had once shut him out were now adorned with works that reflected the diversity and resilience of countless voices. Doubts and reflection. Yet, amidst the whirlwind of changes, Jamal wrestled with doubts. Late one night, he sat alone in his studio, staring at a blank canvas. Had he made the right decision? Purchasing the gallery was a bold statement, but it also tethered him to the very system he had fought to overcome. Would running a gallery distract him from his own art? Would his efforts truly make a difference, or was this just a symbolic gesture? He confided in Aisha, his closest friend and confidant, during one of their regular coffee chats. "I feel like I'm walking a tightrope," Jamal admitted. "What if I lose sight of why I started this journey in the first place?" Aisha, ever the voice of reason, leaned forward. "Jamal, look at what you've already accomplished. You've turned your pain into purpose and created a platform for so many others. Owning this gallery isn't a betrayal of your vision, it's an evolution of it. You're not just creating art anymore, you're creating opportunities." Her words resonated deeply, and Jamal felt a renewed sense of purpose. He realized that his doubts stemmed not from the decision itself, but from the weight of his responsibility. He wasn't just fighting for his voice anymore, he was fighting for countless others. Moving forward. With his resolve strengthened, Jamal threw himself fully into the gallery's transformation. He took an active role in every aspect, from curating exhibitions to meeting with emerging artists. He even reached out to Martin for input, not out of obligation but to glean insights from his years of experience. To his surprise, Martin, now stripped of his arrogance, offered genuine advice, seemingly eager to redeem himself. The grand reopening of Carter's Collective was a resounding success. The gallery buzzed with life, filled with a diverse crowd that reflected Jamal's vision of inclusivity. Attendees marveled at the art, many moved to tears by the powerful stories behind each piece. Jamal, standing amidst the crowd, felt a profound sense of fulfillment. This was more than just a gallery now, it was a movement, a beacon of hope for artists who, like him, had once been told they didn't belong. As he looked around, he couldn't help but smile. This was his art, too. Not on canvas, but in the lives he was changing. A new era. The grand reopening. The day had finally arrived. The gallery, now renamed Carter's Collective, was set to unveil its first major exhibition under Jamal Carter's ownership. The event had been widely publicized, with invitations sent to prominent art critics, collectors, journalists, and community leaders. A line of excited attendees wrapped around the block, waiting to witness the transformation of what had once been an exclusive and inaccessible space. Inside, the gallery was alive with energy. Vibrant, powerful works filled the walls, and installations stood proudly in the center of the main hall. Each piece came from artists whose voices had long been ignored by the traditional art world: women, people of color, LGBTQ+ creators, and individuals from marginalized communities. Every corner of the gallery told a story, of resilience, of identity, of hope. The exhibition was titled Breaking Barriers, a celebration of unheard voices. It was both a declaration and a promise, signaling that the gallery's mission was to amplify the voices of those who had been overlooked. Jamal, dressed in a sharp black suit and surrounded by his team, moved through the crowd with a quiet confidence. He paused often, engaging with guests, answering questions, and listening intently to the artists' reflections on their work. The joy and gratitude in their voices reminded him why he had taken this path. The public's reaction. The response was overwhelming. Attendees marveled at the range and depth of the art, praising the raw emotion and authenticity that emanated from each piece. Critics who had initially been skeptical of Jamal's purchase of the gallery now applauded his bold vision. "This is not just an exhibition, it's a revolution," one critic remarked during a live television interview. Jamal Carter has redefined what it means to be a gallery owner. This space is no longer about exclusivity, it's about inclusivity, about making art accessible to everyone. Social media buzzed with posts and photos from the event. Attendees shared their favorite pieces and stories, with hashtags like #CartersCollective and #BreakingBarriers trending for days. Artists featured in the exhibit gained thousands of followers overnight, their previously underappreciated work finally reaching a global audience. For Jamal, the most meaningful reactions came from everyday people who had never set foot in a gallery before. A group of young black students from a nearby school stood in awe before one of the paintings, their teacher explaining the story behind it. "This is for you," Jamal thought to himself as he watched them. "So you know your stories matter." An unexpected visitor. Toward the end of the evening, as the crowd began to thin, Jamal spotted a familiar face in the corner of the gallery. Martin Gray stood quietly, his hands clasped in front of him as he examined one of the paintings, a bold, colorful piece depicting a group of people lifting each other toward a brighter future. Jamal approached him slowly, unsure of what to expect. Martin turned as Jamal drew near, his expression uncharacteristically soft. "This is quite the transformation," Martin said, gesturing around the room. "I'll admit, I didn't see it at first. But now I understand." Jamal studied him for a moment, searching for insincerity, but found none. "People change," he said simply. Martin nodded. "You've done something extraordinary here, Jamal. I can't take credit for it, but I'm glad I had the chance to witness it." They exchanged a few more words before Martin excused himself, fading into the crowd. Though brief, the interaction hinted at a shift in Martin's worldview, perhaps even a recognition of the role he had played in Jamal's journey. Inspiring the next generation. As the event wound down, Jamal stood in the center of the gallery, taking it all in. The evening had exceeded his expectations, but his mind was already racing with ideas for what came next. This was only the beginning. He turned to Aisha, who had been by his side throughout the evening. "You see those kids over there?" he asked, nodding toward a group of young attendees who were eagerly sketching in their notebooks, inspired by the art around them. "That's why I'm doing this. So they know they belong here. So they know they can create something beautiful and have it be seen." Aisha smiled. "And they will, because you've shown them it's possible." Reflection and legacy. That night, as Jamal walked through the quiet gallery after everyone had left, he paused in front of one of his own pieces, a painting he had created during his most difficult years. It depicted a lone figure standing at the base of a towering wall, a small crack of light breaking through the top. He had titled it Breaking Through. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, from the rejections and humiliation to the triumphs and validation. He thought about the countless people who had supported him along the way, and about the artists whose lives he hoped to impact through this gallery. Most of all, he thought about the power of art, not just as a means of expression, but as a force for change. Jamal smiled, his heart full of gratitude. He had turned pain into purpose, rejection into redemption, and now, he was building a legacy that would inspire generations to come. As he locked the doors of Carter's Collective, the sign above glowed brightly against the night sky, a beacon of hope for those who dared to dream.